Make sure you don't miss a thing. Go to starzology.com/newsletter and sign up. Welcome to the Starzology Astrology Podcast. I'm your host, Alison Price, and I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Arwynne O'Neill.
Hi, Alison. It's great to be here.
So nice to have you once more. So in this episode, amazingly, we are recording our 150th episode, which will be a Q&A.
Yes.
In a way I can't believe we've got here.
But we always say that.
I know. And yet here we are. It's amazing.
I know.
So what we normally do with every important number, which is every 25th episode, we do a Q&A, and these are questions and answers, astrology questions and answers. And the questions come from you, our listeners. And some of you have emailed us, you've texted us, you've sent the messages in on the podcast. So every 25th episode, we do Q&As. These are questions and answers from our listeners. And we've got a few lined up, and hopefully we'll be answering your questions that are astrology related, perhaps about what we've spoken about in the past, or what's coming up, or tips and tricks about reading charts, or anything astrology related.
Totally.
So I think, Arwynne, you have a few questions lined up for us.
Absolutely. So a couple of these actually came from our dispositor tree episode.
Right.
And someone had asked a couple of follow-up questions. Two stood out to me. And one of them was, do we consider the ascendant when creating a dispositor tree?
Well, I never do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Easy.
because you are looking for planets that are disposing others by their rulership of the sign.
Yeah, and the ascendant doesn't have a rulership.
Yeah, technically you could put it in. So say you had a Scorpio rising, you would then put the ascendant under Mars. And you can do that if you want to. The same with the North Node, South Node, and all of that.
Yeah.
You could put those in as well, but I never do.
Yeah.
But maybe it will give you a bigger picture.
Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about this, Arwynne?
I mean, honestly, you are the dispositor tree queen. Like if you Google dispositor trees, you are one of the first links that comes up. And I had never done them before I met you.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't have a personal opinion on this.
Yes.
I've always liked my ascendant, and it's one of the only things I have in a water sign, and it's the only thing I have in Scorpio, and it dovetails nicely with my Mars placement, which is, opposite my ascendant. So that's cool. So yeah, like I might be predisposed to using the ascendant just because I've always loved my ascendant sign.
Right.
Some people don't. Some people kind of like, oh, what?
So you would put your ascendant under Mars because Mars rules Scorpio. And where's your Mars? In Taurus. So that would come under Venus. And where's your Venus?
And Venus is in Libra. So it would all go back to Libra.
Back to Venus,
back
you
to
see.
Venus anyway.
Venus is still the chief.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's one of the things we talked about when we did our dispositor tree episode, was that mine has two like final dispositors. I have Mercury and Venus as the top kind of thing. And
two planet in rulership trees.
That's right, yeah. And Mercury kind of had a little bit of a lead.
Oh, so, that's right.
So in this, if we count my ascendant, maybe Venus would have a little bit of a lead. But it's very close.
It's subtle, because then once you put in the ascendant, are you then going to put the midheaven in?
Right.
And are you going to put the nodes in? Well, of course, it's up to you.
Right.
But I never do.
Whatever you like. But
because in a chart, the energy is where the planets are.
Yeah.
So that's where stuff's happening.
Yeah.
And that's really why I don't do it, to be...
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, totally. Well, there's your answer.
All right.
So the next dispositor tree quest tree. Why is that so hard to say?
I know.
Yeah. Okay. So what if there is no planet in rulership and no mutual reception?
So then you're going to have a committee tree.
Yeah, that's where that comes from.
That's right. So what you would do then, if you have no planet in rulership and no planets in mutual reception, I would then start at your sun position, because you've got to start somewhere, and say, well, what sign is my sun in? So if your sun's in Capricorn, you would then say, well, what sign is Saturn in? And maybe Saturn's in Virgo. And then you would say, well, what sign is Mercury in?
Right.
And maybe Mercury's in Sagittarius. And then you would say, well, what sign is Jupiter in? And maybe Jupiter's in Leo. So you will have a circular relationship if you don't have a final dispositor or a mutual reception.
Yeah.
So it's tricky to find it. And you could have two actual circular rulerships, or circular trees side by side with one loop of planets here and another loop of planets there. So
Yeah.
that's how I would do it.
Two little miniature committees.
Yes, two little trees.
Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And of course you can get, but that's what you do. You find
Start
one
with the
planet,
sun.
follow the chain back. It's like Jerry Maguire, follow the money.
Yeah.
And you go,
Show me the money.
yeah, show me the money. Yeah. And you go all the way back and you say, well, and you find there is a chain. There will then be a chain within your chart.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Good answer. So here is another question from a listener. What are the complex aspect patterns in astrology and what are their significance? Now that's a big question.
Can you rephrase that question?
What are some of the complex aspect patterns in astrology? And how are they different from regular aspect patterns? How about that?
I think they're all complex.
Oh, yeah. Complex would be, I guess, maybe when there's more than two planets involved. So like a Star of David or a grand trine.
Well, all of the patterns have at least 3 planets.
Well, the patterns, yes. Okay, not
Okay,
as opposed to just aspects. Yeah, that's a good point.
Sorry,
Yeah.
so maybe I'm misunderstanding the question.
Yeah.
So the question is...
Complex aspect patterns. I guess aspect patterns are
complex.
by nature complex
Yes,
because
they
there's
are.
more than there's more than 2.
Yes. So if the question is which are more complex aspect patterns than others, I would say those that have got 4 or more planets within them.
Right.
So for sure you would have then the mystic rectangle, which must have 4 planets.
The odd, the grand cross.
Well, the Grand Cross has got 4, but the
Yeah,
Yard
that's-
has got 3. But if you got a conjunction at one of those points and it's triangular, you would then have 4 planets within that yard.
Yeah.
But technically you've got 2 yards, you see, and they have to be unpacked.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure if that's answering that question.
Yeah, and I think their significance is just they're rare. Anything that's rare in astrology or anywhere is considered valuable and interesting.
Oh, yes. And it's more complicated to unpack a Grand Cross, for example.
Yeah.
That you see a Grand Cross and you think, okay, you've got to look at 4 planets,
Yeah.
4 houses,
Yeah.
4 squares, 2 oppositions,
Right.
and unpack all of that first and then bring it together in a summary.
And every one of those 4 planets is going to have its own relationships with other planets
Yes.
going on and offsetting those relationships. So
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So is that answering that question, do you think?
I think so, yeah. I think so.
Yeah, I think not all charts have a major aspect pattern.
That is very true. Absolutely. And some of them only have many aspects. There's lots of aspects. There's always aspects.
There's
no
always
matter what.
aspects, yes, but
But-
not always a pattern.
Not always a pattern. And
Do you have a
is-
pattern in your chart?
I have a few grand trines. Not a few. I have like maybe 2 grand trines.
Oh, okay. I can't recall. Yeah,
At least one.
and this is it. So not all charts will have aspect patterns,
Yeah.
but if they do, you've got to unpack them. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. They're super interesting. And here's a good one for a consulting astrologer. I really like this question. How do you stay motivated when you're reading a chart that sparks no interest for you?
Well, they all are interesting. Let me put it that way.
Okay. So as a consulting astrologer who is like a fledgling someone who's just getting into astrology and trying to consult and read people's charts.
An aspiring astrologer.
That's how we say it. The word.
Yeah.
If they are seeing a chart and they're like, oh God, where do I even, I'm not finding anything interesting here. What are some tricks you can use to find an interesting thing? If you're just looking at someone's chart and you're like, I'm getting nothing.
When people do that and they're reading charts and they're saying, I don't know where to start, the way you start is you start with the ascendant.
Yeah.
So you're going to go to that ascendant position. Say you've got 2 degrees Scorpio. You're going to go to that position. You're going to see which is the 2 chart rulers. Where are they? You're going to look at any aspects to the ascendant degree and any planets in the first house. And that will give you your ascendant complex to unpack immediately about the person.
Yeah. The ascendant complex is where to start.
You start with the ascendant, and then you move on to the chart ruler, which is the planets that rule the chart. So in your case, it would be Mars and Pluto's complexes.
Yeah.
Then you do the sun and the moon.
Yeah.
And honestly, from there, they move on to major aspect patterns.
Yeah.
Depending how much time you've got, or you could
Yeah.
dig your way through the whole. And if you were doing an exam, you'd have to do the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
But you need to start with the main thrust, which are ascendant, chart ruler, sun and moon, and the patterns.
Yeah. Have you had this happen to you, that you are looking at someone's chart and you just don't see anything of interest? Or does
not
it?
really.
Or
No,
have you,
there's
have you
always
been doing it for so
something.
long that, yeah, and
You've got to know how to read the chart. And I do relate it to like driving a car. When you start off, you're hanging on for dear life and you can't look left or right.
10 to 2, your hands.
10 to 2 and you're going down the road and you don't know whether to slow down or not for that red light that's coming up. But when you've been driving for 2 or 3 years, you can, speed, cut corners, park in the no parking bay, eat a hamburger, talk to your kids, turn the radio on, and all of these things. And you're paying attention to that kid who's kicking a ball into the road 100 meters down. Yeah. So you know what you're looking for. And that really is the trick, to know what are we looking for. You're looking for important things in a chart because the person whose chart it is will know about these things already.
Right.
So if they say a stellium or something, they're going to know about that. You can go and discuss that and unpack all of those planets.
Yeah. And that's, I think, probably why it's great to start with the ascendant, because that's what they'll know most about themselves.
Exactly.
If you're talking to them beginning with the ascendant, then you're going to forge a connection with them right off the
this
bat.
is important too. If you're trying to run a business, you want your customers to say, she hit it on the nail on the head.
She sees me.
Yes. So you don't have to go to that Chiron semi-sextile north-south node somewhere back. Don't go there.
Yeah.
Go to what they know about already and they're living on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Another way to deal with this, if you don't know where to go, is to look at the squares, because those are the challenges to be dealt with all the time.
Right.
A trine comes in. We all have a good day, but the difficult days, we remember those.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting.
So I would put it that way, but always start with the ascendant, because that is the gateway, the doorway, what do they say it? The front door.
Exactly. And I haven't ever been a consulting astrologer, but I can speak from this perspective of interviewing people, which I've done for my jobs.
Yes.
And I definitely had experiences where I was interviewing someone who I did not find interesting, and they seemed resistant to even the most compelling questions that I thought were interesting, like, what was the last good book you read? I'm not even saying the last book. I'm saying the last good book. Like, tell me any good book you've ever read. And they're like glossing over, they're telling me about some sales book they read to like better their career. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, and I'm trying not to like roll my eyes as I'm talking. Not that there's anything wrong with salespeople, my God, but holy, and like, what was the last good movie you saw? And they say like something that you find just insipid. You're like, oh God, no. Yes. Like, that's the worst movie I've ever heard of. But then I would try like and I would even say to them, like, here's a question. If you don't like the question, I'll ask you another question. Yes. I would ask them, like, if you could go back in time and like spend a day with anyone in history, who would it be? And I had someone say like Alexander the Great, because like I'd like to know what it was like to run the Roman Empire. And I'm thinking, Greece, not Rome. Like, what are you? Oh no. So, but you'll find something. Like, the whole point of this is not like, there are boring people, but the point is, everyone is interesting if you ask the right questions. Mm. And I would think it would be the same with astrology. Mm. Like, everyone is interesting if you come at their chart the right way, and you compel them to tell you about themselves and say,
well, why are they there? They're there for a reason.
They're there for a reason, exactly. Like, what's your relationship with your mother? Like, if you're seeing moon things, if you're seeing something in the 5th house, or, children, creative, whatever. But
also, I do think that clients find you as an astrologer from your own chart. You attract clients to your chart. Yeah. So my chart is different to your chart or the next astrologer's chart. Right. And we're attracting a different client base. Mm-hmm. Because people come on and say, oh, well, let's have a look at Alison's website. And they say, oh, well, it's got bells and whistles and color and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. I like the vibe.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go to other astrologers' websites, it's all stars and constellations and dark blue and deep dive psychology. And that's that's attracting a different audience.
That's a really good point.
So I do find, and this happened recently where I had 3 clients in the same month who had the exact same birth day, but not the same year. So they were all born, I think it was September the 23rd, but different years. So they all had the exact same sun position that was actually sextiling my natal sun. Yeah. And this is why they came to me. They said, Alison, I saw your stuff. I thought, you're the one for me.
Wow. That's
so
really cool.
you attract, and it's the same in life when you're attracting a mate.
For sure.
You attract someone who's connecting to your chart.
Yeah.
And you really don't get the clients who don't connect to your chart in any way.
Yeah.
So I would say, be careful who you choose as an astrologer, because they're not all the same. And you want to find someone who you vibe with. I can say that word these days. I don't know,
Yeah, no, that's very true. Super interesting.
Yeah. So I would, I don't think it's, what was the question again? those of you interested in a little more, I'm now offering online astrology seasonal sessions. So there's one session in each of the solar seasonal mid-months, which will be February, May, August and November. I'll be chatting about advanced astrology topics through a Zoom presentation. If you're interested, check out the link for my seasonal sessions in the show notes below. Now back to the episode.
What do you do how do you stay motivated when reading a chart that sparks no interest?
Oh no, that never happens.
That never happens. That's really cool. And also, you've been doing this for like 30 some years. So maybe when you first started doing it, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe you've come around to a broader understanding of humanity through your investigations into people's charts, where you have now come to the conclusion over all of the years that there's nothing that doesn't interest you. You're always going to find, you're always going to find something.
Yes. I see someone's chart and I think, let me cast this chart for this person. And I don't know, they're born in 1945 or 1975 or 1985 or whenever it is. And think, let me look at this chart. Oh, it's got this, it's got that, it's got the next thing. The moon's here, the moon's there. Let's check this out, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then my next question will be, if they're a Clyde, how's my sun affecting their chart? Where do they see me?
Yeah.
And which house in their chart does my sun pitch up in their chart?
Oh, interesting.
And that shows how they see me, whether as a fun person or an authority person or a friend or someone.
There's an interesting tip and trick that you can use. Where does your sun fall in this person's chart?
Yes.
That could be the type of advice they've unknowingly come to you for.
That's what they're coming for.
Right. So if your son is in their 10th house, give them career advice. If it's, not to, make it
they see
too
me as
simple.
A professional.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Or they're seeing you as a relationship coach, or they're seeing you as, someone who can help them, master the art of parenting or whatever, or help them delve into, or delve into the depths of their family complexes and help figure it out what went wrong with their parents.
And that's always an interesting thing. And if you are going to pick and choose an astrologer, you might want to ask the astrologer what degree is your sun at, because then you can see before you even book that astrologer where their sun is going to be in your chart and how you are going to see that person as in your life.
Very interesting.
Yes.
That is a great answer. I love it.
Okay.
I love it. Okay, I've got two more.
Okay.
This one, and this is an interesting one because I feel, just from knowing you, that you might not. Okay, so anyway, we'll go with the question. What is shadow astrology?
I don't know.
There you go. Okay, I have gone and done a bit of research, and I'm just going to spew it out here because I don't know either. But what I feel like is that this is one of those interesting questions that may come up, and we don't know, but it's an interesting question, and I have found some answers that are actually kind of compelling.
Okay.
Apparently.
Knock me out.
Yeah. It is a method of astrology that involves identifying and exploring the shadow aspects of a person's natal chart through the shadow of each planet. That's one way of doing it. So, potentially, and this could also be more of a broad thing where it's just the shadow aspects of your personality, which is kind of what we already do anyway, because we're always talking about how squares and oppositions are more interesting than trines and sextiles. That could be seen as like a shadow thing where we're like focusing on the quote unquote negative. It's not negative. It's more like dynamic. Mm-hmm. The dynamic aspects are always going to be the more interesting things. You're not just going to focus on the sextiles and trines and say, you're going to have a happy, flawless life and there's no friction ever. And the person's going to go away thinking, yeah, but, Yeah. So that's one way of
So what are we saying shadow astrology is?
So the other way of looking at it is the shadow planets are apparently the opposite sign of the planet in a person's birth chart is the shadow of it. So if you have your sun,
I see what you're saying.
If your sun is in Libra at 21 degrees, your shadow sun is 21 degrees Aries.
Now that's the position for Vulcan.
Oh?
Yeah. So the idea is that the question arose that if there was a planet that was closer to the Earth and we couldn't see it, where would it hide? And the answer is on the other side of the sun.
Oh.
So that's where Vulcan is positioned. It's a theoretical planet.
Okay.
So if your sun is at
like I said 21 Libra.
21 Libra, then your Vulcan will technically be at 21 Aries. So it's the total opposition.
Okay, amazing. That's really cool.
But
it's only for the sun.
Well, yes, because that's where
Vulcan is.
Aliens could hide close to the Earth on that planet because
here,
we can't see them.
Here be dragons.
Or, I suppose, behind the moon as well, which is the same thing. But anyway.
Yeah, dark side of the moon.
So I don't know. Yeah.
Interesting.
My question would be, well, why would you... What are we saying about shadow astrology? The darker side of the chart, perhaps? Or are we talking about the shadows of retrograde periods? That
I think we're talking about the shadows of each of the planets.
Ah.
But yeah, and apparently it has its roots in ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, and then we're talking about Jung and the shadow self, blah, 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 Carl Jung, etc. So, yeah, it's an interesting exploration depending on the route you go to explore it. Apparently, there is a book called Astrology of the Shadow Self, and this is by, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, Maya Doust. I'm not sure, but anyway, it's a book about shadow astrology, so you could look into that if you're interested. And
so it's theoretical.
It's theoretical. Yeah.
Well, there are theoretical planets, you see.
Oh my God.
If you go into Uranian astrology, it's using the theoretical planets. Right. I don't do it, but that's...
and there's tons of asteroids. There's little bits and pieces of...
I once sat through a conference of Uranian astrology. I thought, I wish I'd sat nearer the door, then I could get out. But and I thought, no, this is not...
It's not for you.
It's not for me. No, not at all.
Yeah.
I don't need theoretical planets. I'm quite happy with what we've got.
Right.
But, yeah, interesting, though.
Totally interesting. And just one thing about the shadow sun thing, which is fascinating, since I'm a Virgo, obviously, which is, we talk about that all the time. The opposite of Virgo is Pisces. Which... Clearly, I have nothing in Pisces, and I have no...
Do not? Gosh.
Yeah. And it's one of those weird... I don't even know that many people. I think I have maybe 2 friends who are Pisces, and...
Yes.
Yeah, and it's one of those... It's kind of a... What's the word? It's like a not a black hole.
An unknown.
Yeah, it's an unknown factor for me. So that is an interesting thing to explore, for sure. If you want to call it shadow astrology, sure. But it's basically the opposite of what you are used to and what you are comfortable with.
And yet, if we look at your ascendant, which is what we were just saying, have you got Tauruses in your life? Heck, yes.
And exactly. But that also has to do with probably Taurus being on my 7th house cusp.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and me having Mars in Taurus at like almost exactly opposite my ascendant.
Yeah.
So if you have something that's opposite your sun, that's another thing to look for. Oppositions in your chart is kind of a comfortable and familiar way of looking at the shadow stuff. But it's true, interestingly, like maybe the time of year that you were born, the exact opposite time. I've always had trouble in like March and early April, like just the opposite of where most of my planets are. Like most of my planets are in Virgo and Libra. And so the opposite of that is like, that March, April time. And I've always had just terrible things happen in March and April.
Yeah, because it's all opposing. All those planets are opposing you. The sun and its entourage are opposing all your planets, right?
Yeah.
I have difficulty when the sun and its entourage enters my 12th house.
Yeah.
The sun, Mercury, and Venus. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I need to hide under the blankies.
Right.
And I just can't when the sun is in that position in my 12th house. I can't function. And I'm thinking, when will it cross my ascendant?
Right.
Let's get this life back on track.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
I suppose you might consider the 12th house as a shadow house, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, probably is.
Yeah.
For sure.
Interesting.
Totally interesting. And our last question of the episode. And I feel like I'm not sure if have we done an episode on horary astrology? No. So someone is asking, what is the deal? What's involved in the practice of horary astrology?
Horary astrology.
Yeah.
Horary is one of those words that you really have to practice saying.
Horary. So
horary means of the hour.
Yeah.
So what happens is that if somebody comes to you and they ask you a question, you make a note of the time they asked you the question.
Yeah.
What was the hour? What was the time when the question was asked?
Yeah.
And then you cast a chart to give the answer to that question that was posed at that time.
Yeah.
So if you said to me, Alison, what's this? Who's going to win? I don't know, whatever your question would be. We would then cast the horary chart and see what would the outcome be.
Yeah. This is one of those things where people will use the example of like, where are my keys, or where my dog ran away, or my car was broken into, and you run the chart of when the question was asked, and then you can investigate. Things like that. It's not like a relationship thing or like a career. You're not asking personal questions like that. It's more like mystery questions.
Yes. So technically, you can also use this if there's some girls gone missing, and you want to, and the police, this is the ideal, and the police are saying, well, where could she be? Or the parents are saying, and they can then consult an astrologer and say, well, when they ask the question, where is my daughter? That would be the time you would cast the horary, and the chart would then reveal it.
Yeah.
So where are your keys? Yeah, who has time to do those charts?
Yeah.
But horary is often used for people in Eastern Europe who do not have birth times.
Oh, interesting.
And in Africa, there's a lot of people who don't know what time they were born.
Yeah.
So a horary question actually will zoom in. So if you've got the question like, will I get the job that I just went for the interview for?
Right.
That is worthwhile asking that question. Or the other one is he the one? And that's the question. At the time, you would then cast the horary chart because you don't have a birth chart for the person.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
So it's a way of bypassing for people who really don't have birth times. It's far more common in Europe than we do here in North America.
That's a great insight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because a lot of people would probably be like, why would you even bother?
Why would you even? I mean, I wouldn't cast a chart if I lost my keys. I'll just say, well, I mean, the other day I lost my cell phone in the apartment. I couldn't find it. Eventually I had to ask Siri to find it. And of course, she knows where everything is. And she found my cell phone.
Really?
And it was in the bathroom under a towel for information. But I would never have found the thing. I knew it was here somewhere.
Siri knew it was in the bathroom under a towel?
Because it pinged my phone and then I could find it.
Okay.
But I mean, I wouldn't then cast, as an astrologer, I wouldn't cast a chart and say, where's my cell phone?
No.
And then it comes up and, the sun's like below the horizon, therefore it's below you or to the east or the west. And no.
To the 12th house, which means the bathroom.
Just teetering on the back of the loo. Or you dropped it in the garbage room when you dropped all the stuff out, which is where we're going my socks,
Would that be the 6th house? I don't know. Never mind.
Well, yeah, 8th. That would be the 8th, taking out the garbage, taking out the trash.
Oh,
yeah.
my God.
But I never do horary work. It's just, what's the point?
Yeah. Did you do more of it when you lived in Africa?
No. We still just fumble on. But horary is, if you're doing it for yourself, you could probably say, well, will I get that job I went for an interview for? And maybe this is more relevant these days. Yeah. Will I get this job? You're better off, even though not doing the horary for that, you're better off casting the chart for the time of the interview.
Right.
10 a.m. Vancouver on Tuesday. What does that chart look like? And that will tell you whether you're going to get the job or not.
Yeah.
So,
as someone who's currently seeking a job, I can tell you, in the time it would take me to run a horary chart about whether I get that job or not, I would probably just apply for 2 more jobs.
Exactly. But if you're given the option of saying, well, we can interview you today at 10 or tomorrow at 3, you can then cast the 2 charts and you want the better ascendant. And that's really what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
But we're digressing. But horary, I never do horary.
Yeah.
It's just...
Those are some of the uses, though, if you were so inclined.
If you would, yes. Yeah. Or where's my lost dog?
If you have new astrology software and it's burning a hole in your pocket and you can't think of something to do.
Come on, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
But, if you've got a murder mystery, it's like, where's the body buried? And the chart will tell you. So.
Oh, interesting. I love it.
I know. I thought that would
a little bit
pique your interest.
True crime podcast.
True crime astrology. Yeah. Where's the body buried?
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good use for it, for sure. I love that.
Oh.
All right. Well, those were all the questions I've got.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've had several questions that were from our listeners, which we've answered. Owen and I have been addressing these questions. We're celebrating our 150th podcast episode.
Yay.
And who knew we would get this far? We've been putting out a podcast every week for 150 weeks, unbelievably.
Yeah. And
still going strong. And here we are. So if you'd like to email us, you can email us at starzology@gmail.com. And you can make sure you get my newsletter, which goes out every Sunday. That's at starzology.com/newsletter. Sign up for that. I talk about astrology stuff. And please do follow Arwynne, and she is at...
I'm at mspink.net. That's mspink.net. And I am talking about books, art, society, movies...
Travel.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, just whatever strikes my fancy. So.
Yeah.
It's coming out once a week, and you can sign up and get subscribe and get those updates every week.
And get the newsletter.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And so that's great. And you can also text us if you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Go to the link at the very top in the show notes, and it says text us. You can text your question to us, and we'll be answering it at God help us, our 200th episode, which will be later in the year. That will be coming out there. If you found value in this episode, please do share it with anybody who'd be interested. And we do have some astrology freebies. That's at starzology.com/freebies, where there are some PDFs and downloads to help you get going with astrology.
Yeah.
So, Arwynne, I want to thank you so much for coming along and corralling all our questions once more for us.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, all of our listeners, for contributing and asking your questions. And please ask us more questions for the next Q&A episode. And we'll see you next time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the two main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer or someone who's learning astrology or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.